panel moderator. One sec. All right. So welcome, everyone. My name is Elise Portolato again. I'm with the Emerging Enterprise Center, and I'm very excited for this panel today, which is called Publicity Strategies for Startup Success, where you're going to be learning kind of the secrets behind getting those major publicity success. So if there are background noise, so I ask that everyone in this room mute themselves unless you're a speaker. To mute yourself, there is a mute button in the bottom left corner of this video. I'm going to have to mute everyone now and then just ask speakers to unmute them. All right, everyone is back to being muted. So you're going to learn a lot of the secrets behind getting major publicity, and every single one of these panelists has received that success, and they're going to be sharing their expert advice about how to really find leverage that type of PR and marketing to get your brand and business out into the public. And moderating today's panel, I am very excited that Ariel Gruzowitz, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that, is the Director of Innovation at Delaware Prosperity Partnership, who has been an amazing partner for today's event. And she is focused on strengthening the high-tech entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystem here in Delaware. So I'm very excited to have Ariel join us. And with that, I'm going to let Ariel take over the panel. I'm going to be muting everyone again. I ask everyone mute themselves if you are not speaking, except for our speakers today.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay, and make sure the speakers unmute. I see some of the speakers are still muted. Thank you, Elise. I am going to do some quick introductions of our three panelists. Then we'll move on to a couple of rounds of questions for discussion. And then at the end, we'll save some time for audience Q&A, which I think Elise will help us with. So on to the introductions. On today's panel, focused on strategies to help get featured in major publications and news outlets, we have, and speakers, as I introduce you, if you could just give a little wave to the camera so that people know who you are. First, we have celebrity chef Dana Herbert, who is the owner of the multi-award-winning bakery Desserts by Dana in Newark, Delaware. He's the winner of TLC's hit show, Next Great Baker, and has baked for big names such as Oprah and Vice President Joe Biden. Next, we have Gail Dillman, who is the owner and co-founder of Gable Music Ventures, which produces Wilmington's own Ladybug Festival, the nation's largest celebration of women in music. And finally, we have Tommy Inukai, who is a retired writing teacher at University of Maryland and Johns Hopkins University, who invented a product called Tip and Split, a handheld device with magnifier, light, tip calculator, and bill splitter, which has been featured on the Today Show, The View, QVC, and more. She has also generously provided a free downloadable copy of her ebook, How I Got My Product on QVC, The Today Show, The View, and more in retirement to all participants today. So welcome to our speakers. So first, I'm going to start with Connie. Connie, the first question for you is, as a self-identified grandmapreneur who became an inventor after a full career, what were your steps to get your product in front of your audience, start generating awareness and buzz?
Okay, so first let me tell you that I had my little granddaughter on for 1 second because I am a grandmapreneur and my granddaughter Victoria lives with me along with her brother. Okay, so she's not going to bother us anymore. Okay, so how did I get started? Well, first of all, I'm always pitching. Okay. After I invented my product, I started going to pitching events. And the first one that I went to was in Bethesda, Maryland, and it was called the Women's Power Conference. And they had something called a DC Shark Tank pitch contest. So I didn't know anything about pitching, but I decided I would try. So I actually won. And I didn't win any money, but I had so much fun. And so then I started pitching more. And I went to an inventors trade show, and they had QVC there, and they had a panel there. And it was a little bit embarrassing to me because I went there and my manufacturer let me down, and I didn't have a product. So I pitched with pictures of my product. And the panel said to me, well, why don't you come back when you have your product? So the next year I came back and I said, do you remember me? And they said, yes. And so I said, I have my product now. So I pitched, and they immediately put me on QVC. So I'm pitching all the time. As a matter of fact, I just pitched in February, right before COVID. And I pitched to a group, to a company that works with Score, and they chose my product. And now they're going to put my product on Home Shopping Network and a Canadian Shopping Network for Christmas. So my advice to everybody is to always pitch. And one other way that you can find out about pitching is there's a great resource for anybody who wants to know about this. It's called HARO. It's HARO, and they announce, it's called Help a Reporter Out. And they always, every day you get 3 emails from them, and they tell you what they're looking for, and they will tell you where you can pitch to. So I look at that every morning. Their first newsletter is at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I go through that, and through that I find other opportunities. And one of the opportunities that I found about 1 month ago was they were looking for people to interview about inventing. So I was selected, and they wrote an article about me on Authority magazine, and it's going to be in Thrive Global, and then an Entrepreneur magazine, and it's called a series called Meet the Inventors. So I'm always pitching, and that's my advice to you guys. Always be pitching.
Great. Thank you, Connie. All right, moving on to Dana.
Oh,
Dana.
Never mind. Okay.
Go ahead.
No,
well, you'll have another chance in a few minutes, so we'll come back to you, Connie. So Dana, what did you learn about yourself and your brand through your experience winning TLC's Cake Boss Next Great Baker, which gave you worldwide recognition and made you a local sensation?
You know, I learned a couple things on TLC's Next Great Baker. The first word being responsibility. You know, a lot of times we're working in our craft, but once you start to shine that magnifying glass on your business and on your brand, it does take almost everything you do is kind of open to the public, whether it's through your social media, whether it's through people walking in the stores, the materials that you're handing out. So I had to become very aware of what exactly I was presenting to the public in regards to my brand. The second thing that I had to realize on TLC was that from that show, Next Great Baker, a secondary brand was born. And what I mean by that is, you know, I've always had the bakery and I've always made all these amazing baked goods, but because of the show and them highlighting me for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks as an individual, now there's going to come a point in time when there's going to be people, whether it be, I don't know, pharmaceutical companies or this company or that company that wants Chef Dana, and there's going to be a whole nother lane that wants Desserts by Dana. So in a sense, I'm strengthening my one brand, which is desserts, which is what I'm known for. But then all of a sudden I had to realize that this thing that has always been there running in tandem is now like this. And I have to maintain both brands now. So responsibility definitely came into play because I had to look at both of them now as two different products.
All right, very interesting. So really having to keep in mind your different audiences or what brand you're really focused on at the moment. Okay, let's move on to Gail. Gail, for most small businesses, funding dictates decisions that are made in terms of marketing and PR. So how have you leveraged free or low-cost forms of publicity to turn your festival into one of the largest celebrations of women in music?
Thank you. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you. So, you know, when we started our festival about 9 years ago, we didn't have any at all to do this. And so we had to come up with very creative ways in which to get the word out. We didn't have money for advertising, so we couldn't necessarily buy ads in newspapers or magazines or anything like that. So one of the things I started to do was network. Who do I know who has a platform? And I highly recommend, you know, when you're starting and you want to get the word out on something, to see who's right in your own backyard, because there's a lot of resources that are right there. People who will happily share your information on their platforms. So a lot of what we did was very grassroots. We engaged people, anybody who had a vested interest in our event, which were the musicians, the sound company, the venues. We engaged them all. We brought them into the conversation and said, we're going to give you some great graphics. We're going to give you some promotional information that you can share, and share it on all of your social media platforms. And we literally would guide our musicians and venue owners and vendors, anyone that was associated with the event, into how do you actually do that. So there's a lot of hand-holding. But by doing something like that, the grassroots effort that really started from the bottom and pushing it on up, we got millions of social media impressions by doing that. And it was really, really helpful to do that. But you have to put a little bit of work into it. You have to give people the information by which you want them to share. If you want something to look a certain way, give them that look to share on their social media platforms. So there's nothing super complicated about it, other than you barter, you find people who will trade off sponsorship for visibility, and that's how we did it, with really almost no money, to create the largest celebration of women in music right here in Wilmington, Delaware. Hopefully next year, live and in person.
Yes, definitely. Okay, thank you, Gail. All right, Connie, we're going to come back to you. Where did you look for guidance to help you navigate promotional marketing for a new product when you were getting started? And Connie, I think you're back on mute if you want to unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm okay now. So where do I look for guidance? Well, one thing that I did is I joined SCORE. We have a local SCORE, and I thought, it's about time I joined, because they might be able to help me with things. And they are absolutely amazing. And my SCORE rep just helps me through the process all along. And I also go to a lot of webinars, especially now with COVID. We're all Zoomed out every day. Whenever I have a chance, or whenever I see something, I go to it and I learn more and more about promotion. And one thing that I did is I used to be a writing teacher. So I decided that after I made my invention, I decided to write a book to help other inventors or entrepreneurs on how to promote your product. So I'm really so excited. This is my book, and you all get a copy of it if you just sign up for it. And I share with you how to get your product noticed. Okay, and one of my biggest things is there are always going to be no's, and learn how to change those no's into a yes. So I actually don't mind a no, because usually when you get a no, they'll tell you what to do to make it into a yes. And my example of QVC is one of them. They told me, come back when you have your product. You know, I do this in my whole life. And well, this is not about promotion, but when I started out, I was a teacher. And I was teaching English, and I went into Columbia University and I said, I'd like to teach here. And they said, well, do you have a master's? And I said, no. So they said, well, come back when you do. So I walked across the campus and I signed up for a master's degree program. And 1 year later, I went back to the director and I said, I have my master's. Can I have a job? So he said, yes. So I always look at the no. Okay, so what can I do? So my no actually got me a master's degree from Columbia and a job teaching at Columbia. So I love no's. Okay, because if you take them as how do I make it into a yes?
That's a great attitude for an entrepreneur, for sure.
Thank you.
So I want to follow up with you, Connie, on one thing you said earlier. You talked about the resource Haro, and they send 3 emails a day where you can check opportunities for promotion. Are there any other daily rituals that you have that really help you kind of stay focused and continue on your journey?
The Haro is wonderful, and it's free, by the way. Are there any other rituals? Well, I think that I have a mindset to always, I don't need to go to a 9-to-5 job because I work all the time from home. And now I don't really have a ritual, but I'm always reinventing. And my motto actually is that nobody told me I'm too old to be reinventing myself because I'm retired. By the way, I'm 72 years old and I'm working on another project now. And then I had another project in the back of my head. And for those of you who are interested in it, who are over 50, I was accepted to be a writer for Entrepreneur Magazine. And I'm going to start a column for people who are over 50 who are becoming entrepreneurs at this age. And I was just thinking about it. I'm going to call the title of my series, if they accept me, Nobody Told Us That We Were Too Old to Become an Entrepreneur. So anybody who wants to be interviewed for that, just contact me. So I guess I don't need any kind of like inspirational, set up something. I just always think of them.
That's great. That's very inspirational. Thank you. All right, moving back to Dana. Dana, you talked a little bit about having these different brands that sort of developed from your experience on TLC. So how do you continue building those different brands, and what's your kind of strategy to take that, to recognize that, and then take those 2 different brands and continue to build on those with the appropriate audiences?
Well, I would say that, from being on TV, and it really increased my awareness of what was going on, how TV worked, how it could, promote the different brands. And I just had to focus on those 2 things. I had to, in a sense, respect the 2 brands. Although they seem like they go like this a lot of times, when needed, they loosen up and they become their own entities. I realized that there were different things that Chef Dana could do, and there were different things that Desserts by Dana could do. And so these people over here wanted, Chef Dana. So like I was saying before, whether it was, working for pharmaceutical in the culinary field, whether it was, being on the Macy's Culinary Council, when I went that way, it was a Chef Dana thing. And then say when I come over here and maybe I work with, ShopRite on desserts or this or that, it's more of a, hey, we want to work with Desserts by Dana. And I had to be able to delineate between the two and then know which way to go to, I guess you could say, to maximize the opportunity. I look at TV and it's changed the way that I look at working with my brands, in that when I go on TV, and I come from a competitive circuit, most people have seen me on competition shows. I have to look at the competition shows when I get there as, wow, I already won. And what I mean by that is, of course, yeah, we're going for this prize of 10 grand or 50 grand or whatever. But the reality is I'm on TV and my brand is being highlighted. I already won. It's up to me to figure out what to do with that. And do I want to shine it on Chef Dana for a purpose, or do I want to shine it on Desserts by Dana for a purpose?
And does that factor into your social media strategy? So do you have two different identities on social media that you use for different purposes based on those two different brands?
It does. On Facebook, I have, two different identities, Chef Dana and I have Desserts by Dana. On Instagram, though, it's a little, for lack of better words, a little messier because I have one and people are so used to it. I guess in some ways, sometimes I'm afraid to break them apart because the following is gotten so big. But you're right. I do have to figure out in that social media realm, the ones that are separated, what am I broadcasting over here versus what am I broadcasting over there?
Well, a big following is a good problem to have, right?
It is.
Okay, great. Okay, so turning to Gail again, if you could put your finger on one thing that you feel has made the largest impact in promoting your brand, what would it be?
It's a great question. And kudos to Connie also, I want to say about, reaching out to women over 50 and how reinventing your life, because that is truly my story as well. I thought a lot about this question, and there have been so many things that I think have impacted the success of my business, Gable Music Ventures, and the Ladybug Festival. But one of, I think, the most important things that happened to us 4 years ago was that we rebranded the event. We literally took what we had as a logo, and we worked with a graphic designer and came up with a new image for Ladybug. And although, people don't necessarily always pay a lot of attention to how something, the words around an event, this, I think, started to really capture what the event is about in terms of empowering women. We went from this kind of cutesy look to a much more sophisticated look, a much more, yay women look, empowering them. So I think, when thinking about what really changed the trajectory of what we were doing, that was one of the most important things. Actually just changing the font and changing the colors of the event. It seems like it would be a small thing, but it actually then, it gives you a new lease on life. So it's like you're working all of a sudden on a new event. And I think that was, so far, in thinking about it, that seems to me to be one of the most important things that we did. I want to just touch back for a quick second on, using the social media, because once we changed the look, then we had to get that new look out again. So it was kind of like starting over with our social media, which meant that we had to go back and reintroduce it to the artists. And one of the most effective things that we have found in getting our brand out is not only do you give your people that are engaged in your event, give them the information, but then make sure they're actually doing it. So when we hire 70 women to come perform for Ladybug, I actually have part of my staff that their job is to go and look at their websites, look at their Instagram, look at all their social media to make sure that they have captured it, they're engaged with it, and they're using my brand, not something that says the Ladybug Festival in their own font. I'm really particular about that. I want them to use what we created, our registered trademark. So that's, I think, something that I wanted to go back to in terms of the effect, how to make social media effective without spending a dime. Well, you're kind of spending a dime because you have to pay your staff to do it, but you're not having to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on advertising. Social media can be a wonderful tool. And if you know how to use it, if you know how to target audiences, if you know how to promote, do specialized promoted posts, it can be a wonderful tool. It can really help people who don't have much money to spend. But going back to the original question, changing our look, I think, was really very effective for us.
I'm curious what led to that. Was the use of social media helpful to you to kind of read your audience and see how you needed to maybe rebrand a little bit? And is that what helped drive you to change the look? Or was it more changing the look first and then sort of a revitalization happened after that?
It is really a combination. When we started Ladybug Festival, we never, ever thought it was going to grow to the point that it did. So when we asked somebody to design a logo for it, which is great, but it was a logo for an event that we started in 2012. And what happened was the event started to grow and expand and become multi-layered for empowering women and giving women a platform to be heard in a festival circuit where they're not competing with men. Which, if you know the industry, you know that most festivals have less than 25% women on their lineup. So as we realized how impactful this festival was becoming, we started to look at the whole picture, each piece of it, the colors, the fonts, how we were selling it to the world. And we came to that decision that, look isn't really what we're all about. We needed to change it. And we found a great designer. So, that is where I would say, if you have money, find yourself a good graphic designer, because that can make all the difference in the world. With our talking about what this event is to look like and what we're hoping it's going to do over time, we came up with that look. So
Great.
Not overnight.
Great. Okay, Connie, going back to you, you're the one of our three speakers who is not Delaware based. You're based in Maryland. And a lot of your exposure so far has really been national or global, but do you also have more of as Gail does, sort of this grassroots local focus at all, or are you simply more focused on maintaining that national exposure? And if so, kind of how do you do both?
Well, that's a good question. So I'm kind of new at this. Honestly, like, I started learning about being an entrepreneur at age 68. So I'm a little bit behind with a lot of the technology and stuff. And I'm trying to grow. And so I guess I'm just sort of national, although I was covered in a local newspaper, which got me a little publicity. There's a newspaper in the DC area called the Beacon, and it's for people, their audience is for people over 50. And so they did a story about me. And so, that was my first local exposure. I really am trying now to increase my base locally, and then I can expand. But actually the avenues I'm choosing are not really local, like Entrepreneur Magazine is not local. So by the way, the people who want to be on that, I haven't even started yet. I just got accepted to be a writer for them. So give me a little time. I'm waiting for after this conference to be done before I approach Entrepreneur Magazine. But that's a great question. Right. Everything has been national. I have a new project also.
Oh, okay. Would you like to talk about that now?
Sure, I would love to. Because when COVID hit, because of my age, I don't like to go outside because I'm in the high risk category. So what I did is, starting in March, I started going through all my photo albums and shoe boxes filled with pictures, And I gathered up everything and I wrote a book, not a real book, a book of my life to pass down to my children and grandchildren, because COVID makes you aware of how short life is. So actually, here's my book. And it's filled with pictures so that I can pass things down to my children after I'm gone, because how else are they going to know about me? So my new project is to help other people who want to write their life story. Now, anyone could do it without me. You don't need me. I'm just sort of like a catalyst to say, let's get started. And if they want some accountability, they can work with me. And this is my new project where I'm helping people to write their life story.
Great. Well, that's a good segue, because I was going to get there in the next round of questions. So along those same lines, moving to Dana, I'm sure being in the food industry, things have changed for you during the pandemic. So sort of a two-part question: how have you had to pivot during the coronavirus pandemic? And then optimistically thinking post-pandemic, or at least after things are more under control and more back to normal, do you have sort of post-pandemic pivoting plans for your business model or for promoting your new brands?
Okay, sure. So let's see. Pandemic pivots, or how were we affected during the pandemic? Being in the food industry, you definitely felt like, you got punched in the face, like you were going down, like that famous fight between, who was it, Ali and Frazier? And they're like, down goes Frazier. Well, down went the food industry. But, they say if you can land on your back and look up, you can always get up. You just have to have the will to do it. And when you get up, you really just have to look at the situation and say, okay, what revenue streams can I not count on anymore? For someone in my area, it was, kind of like the wedding market. That was very like, all right, well, we're just going to peel $100,000 off the top and just slide that to the side. Don't count it, because, every week you're getting a phone call that a wedding's postponed or canceled. Then I looked at my people and said, okay, if the work's not there, and this is one of those things that I think for a small business, you treat your people like family. It hurts to be like, you know what, I'm going to have to furlough you, so at least you can get unemployment, because if it's not coming in the door, I want to make sure your family's getting fed, first and foremost. And then after that, then we had to really look at the bare bones and say, okay, what do the people want in the middle of this pandemic? What do they really want to buy? And so that's what we really focused on producing. And I think that's really part of what helped us get through the pandemic. Because I looked at some of our sales and I was like, is that possible that our sales this month equal the same sales from last year, even in the midst of the pandemic? That's crazy. But we were selling a lot more cupcakes and things like that. So I think God really showed us how to take lemons and make lemonade. So what got birthed out of the pandemic was that our virtual game really shot up. Everybody's on the tablets, computers, etc. And I think from now and even going into the future, you really have to pay attention to that. I mean, Amazon kind of showed you already, hey, look how much is going on. But if you weren't in that sort of space already, really focusing on people buying from the internet, then you were kind of like missing it. It was going right over your head because what you were doing was successful until something like this hits. And you're like, man, I should have built that out a long time ago. So for me going forward, we're definitely looking at what we're doing, how we're selling it, what's available locally, what could be available nationwide. Because really you have a nationwide market once you step into the cyberspace. And so that's what we're focusing on. And speaking of TV, we've been fortunate in that we've been working with a local TV station, and now we'll have our own TV show running every week, somewhere starting in, I think it's mid-November. The
That's
kitchen's
great.
almost done being at the studio. So we're excited. It'll give us great regional access. It'll strengthen both my brands, by seeing me regularly. So with that, we're going to take that presence there with the TV station, and our goal is to not just shine the light on Chef Dana, but we're going to shine the light on a bunch of local chefs that I really believe should have a shot on TV, but they just have not been approached, or no one's told them, hey, dude, you got it. You just haven't had the opportunity yet. Mm-hmm.
Can you share a little bit more about what the station is? And
Sure. It'll be on DETV channel 28, Comcast locally, so it'll be available all throughout the state. A little bit in PA as well is what we're going to be doing. Super excited. Great sponsors. We're sponsored by BKT Bathroom, Kitchen, and Tile. We're also sponsored by GE. So we've just had a really great relationship in creating this kitchen. It looks beautiful. Can't wait for everybody to see it. It's nice, it's modern, but still has a homey feel. And I think the other chefs in the area are going to like it as well, because I don't think any other station really has a kitchen built into the studio where you can just turn on the lights and record. You're ready to go.
Wow, that's exciting. I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Gail, we're going to go back to you for, I think, one last question, and it's similar to what we've just been talking about with Connie and Dana. I'm sure with a large in-person festival, you had to pivot this year with the coronavirus pandemic. So how did you do that? And looking ahead to post-pandemic, hopefully next year you will be able to have something in person, but if you can just kind of walk us through
Sure.
how you pivoted through that.
So my industry is the hardest hit of a lot of businesses, the music entertainment industry. We're going to be the last ones to recover. So supporting any kind of music venture, I encourage everyone to do. We realized by April that we were not going to be able to have Ladybug Festival in its traditional form. So we went to a digital platform. And actually it was really interesting because we did a 2-day event that spanned 2 evenings. And we were able to get a much, much higher level of act for a fraction of what it would have cost to bring those people into Wilmington. It was a really interesting experience. We had about, 75 or so women and different speakers over the course of two days, 2 evenings. And it was a really fun, great experience. We really changed our footprint of Ladybug Festival. So we've had to transition to this digital platform. We've had to find ways to also monetize our business differently. And I'll tell you, this is where being an entrepreneur is really not for the faint of heart. Because if you can't figure out how to get up and do it again every day a different way, you cannot survive in this environment. This is brutal. So we're actually doing a few different things. Because it's not over until the world is over, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm finding new ways. So one of the things we're doing is we're working on our YouTube channel, and we're looking to increase subscribers to that channel so that eventually we can use that as a monetary stream. So that's one thing we're doing. So please subscribe to Gable Music Ventures YouTube channel, and all sorts of fun things on there. Second is that we are trying to market and sell our digital services as well, that we can put on events, parties, and whatever for people using music. And it doesn't matter what your business is, we can jump in and we can do that for you. We did that for the town of Smyrna at night. We put on I think it was like 2.5 hours worth of music. It was free, and it highlighted the town of Smyrna, and it was great fun. And we love doing stuff like that. Looking forward to next year, it's really difficult to plan. Really difficult, because we don't know if we're going to be able to have live events or we're going to have to keep things digital. What I'm hoping for is that we're going to obviously be able to do a live event. But in addition to that, I think we've discovered that there's space and time don't mean as much when you're doing digital things. People can jump in anywhere. So I think we're always going to now be embracing a digital component to our events. I think this is just another way that we can increase our brand, that we can be attractive to sponsors to come in and say, put your name with us, because we're getting seen not only across the country, but internationally as well. So you'll be seeing us hopefully doing live events next year, but constantly incorporating the digital side of it as well. It's like we have a new business in a sense. And which is kind of exciting, a little nerve-wracking, but kind of exciting. We are going to be also, starting in probably January, we're going to be introducing a workshop associated with the Ladybug Festival, and they're going to be called Jam Sessions, Join, Achieve, and Master. And there'll be more information coming on that down the road. But if anyone's interested in sponsorship, come see me. So thank you.
That sounds great. Well, thank you to all three of our speakers. I think we're getting to the point where we should probably switch to taking questions from the audience. So I want to thank Dana, Connie, and Gail again, and please check them out on social media, and look out for that new show on DETV that's coming out on Local 28, where you'll get to see Dana and other local chefs. So Elise, I guess I'll turn it back over to you to take the questions from the audience.
So well, thank you guys. I thoroughly enjoyed. I love how you guys really emphasize this multi-channel marketing and how you're using content in different ways, or reimagining your content in different ways. And I also love that you're, really focused on moving your business online. And that's just what this moment's showing is important. So for those on the call, and there are a few of you, so there is again, using the chat feature in the bottom part of your screen, you are welcome to type in questions for Dana, Connie, or Gail about marketing, branding, publicity, or I think typing your questions probably be the easiest. If anyone has any issues, please feel free to speak up. I know that this is a new platform and everyone's on different browsers, and there's always just room for issues, so you can always unmute yourself and ask a question if needed. But the chat function is probably one of the easiest ways. Well, I'm going to jump in and ask one of my questions, and I think you guys kind of all hit on pieces of it. Oh, someone's asking a question. But I'm actually wondering, what? Oh, I have the question in my head. What is it that when you're like creating a piece of content, or when you're creating so for instance, Dana, you're starting your television show at DETV. Are you using that content in other ways? Like what forms are you using it to, again, expand that past the television, or how are you repurposing that content that people can take away some great tips?
That is a great question. I always try to look at my end game and work backwards. I know it's a little different because you always say, oh, you have to start the race. You know what I mean? But I try to look at the finish nowadays instead of looking just at the beginning. And so for me, like the content that would be coming off of TV, I take it, I look at it, and I say, okay, how am I going to grow my Chef Dana brand? Because on TV, I'm doing more cooking than I am baking and doing desserts. So I look at it like, how am I growing my Chef Dana brand, number one. Number two, from taping these film segments, in thinking the end game, I'm already thinking Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, etc. So I have to look at the way it's produced, the way it's filmed, the way it looks, and say, okay, at the end of the day, am I able to take this, repurpose it, and sell it again?
Are there any other panelists that have you used this way of, you create one piece of content, I know, and then now, is there any other tips you have for folks when you see a piece of content, how you can use it multiple times to, again, achieve your goal of getting your brand more recognized in different mediums and forms and audiences?
If I can jump in, I think when you create content, I think using it consistently and taking the same message, the same look, and remembering that Instagram has a different audience than Facebook. Twitter has a different audience than Instagram and Facebook. And using it that way. I don't know if I'm really answering or addressing your question, but content needs to be very well thought out before you post anything. I think there's a lot of people put out a lot of content, but it's not necessarily meaningful to what they're trying to achieve. So I think Dana, you said it, you have to kind of see your end goal. What do you want to have happen with your content, and then really curate that block of information, and then really multitask it out to different platforms. If you just in today's world, you just can't leave it to just Facebook or just anything. You have to get engagement and make sure you have partners that are engaged in sharing that content as well. Because if only 10 people are seeing what you're saying, you're not really going to get anywhere with it. So make sure that the content you give people or you create is good, have good graphics, make sure you have hashtags, make sure you look at it from totality and then send it out. Does that make sense?
No, that's great advice. And I think it's hard for a lot of small businesses with limited resources and limited staff. So making sure you're not putting out all of the content, but focusing your efforts on one great piece of content, and then how you're going to get it out to the different channels is really important. And also being open to trying it in different channels and see where that leads. So I have a question for Connie. What were some of the advantages and disadvantages you have faced starting your business after 50?
Okay, so this question was from Andre, and thank you for that question, Andre. So I can think of only one disadvantage, and that is I grew up with a typewriter. So all of this new technology is really hard for me, and I'm struggling with how to do Instagram, and I guess I have to do all of these things. But when you talk about advantages, I would say most of them, starting a business after 50, are mostly advantages, because I actually can't help that I'm getting older, so I have to run with it. And so I'm using it. Okay, so I'm using it to my advantage, because I'm using all of my experience to help me move forward. And actually, as we get older, we hopefully have more wisdom. And also, when you get older, you have less fear, because I think you're young and you have a family to support. I don't really have to worry about that. I already went through that process. So I'm actually trying to, I don't have the same problems that a younger person has. So I can focus on what I want to do. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much, Connie.
Okay, thank you.
So is there, before I ask one, we're kind of getting close to the time. Are there any other questions from those in the audience? It's really, I know this is something that every single business faces, is how to leverage their resources, social media, and marketing. You have a question? Anyone have a question? Feel free to put it into the chat. I do encourage everyone to mute themselves if they're not speaking. All right, so my question is going to be to, I would say, Gail, you kind of hit on this question, but Dana and Connie, again, if you're not speaking, please mute yourself. If you do have a question, please use the chat so we can know that you need to ask a question. Thank you. If you were to put your finger on one thing that you feel like you've done that has really helped catapult your brand, because I know Connie and Dana have really had a lot of national success with their business, but you probably did different things to get it. So if you were to put your finger on one thing that you feel like you've done to get the word out that was the most helpful to get your brand out there, what was it? Is it using people, social media? What was that one thing that you feel?
Are you asking me first?
Well, yeah, Gail, if you want to jump in too.
Sure. I think it's really hard to say one thing. It's really hard to say what was the one thing, because some of it's luck, some of it's timing, but all of it is being passionate about your brand, being passionate about what you do. Because when you have energy, people feel it. And when you are dedicated to what you're doing and it's important, people feel that and they sense it, and then they want to be a part of that. And it gives you credibility, and it gives you, it legitimizes what you're doing. Because as you can imagine, in the music industry, people look at me and they go like, oh, I don't know if I want to be associated with music. But when they talk to me and my business partner, and they see the energy that goes into it, and they see the quality, and they see the production, people want to be associated with it. So the one thing I would say is love what you're doing. You know, share the energy, because when you share that, you get it back. And that's to me, because there's all sorts of other things. I talked about branding, using your Instagram, Twitter, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, all very important. Change your brand, change your look, you know, do a redo, overdo, whatever at some point. But remember to keep your energy levels high. And that's hard to do when you're an entrepreneur. It's very hard to, when you're running a small business, it's hard to feel empowered, engaged, and energized. But those are the things that will make you stand out and make your business succeed. So it's a great question. Thank you.
I love that answer. Do Connie or Dana, do you have anything to add to that? We have about one more minute before we need to start wrapping this panel and instructing people to get to the next panel. Go ahead, Connie.
I loved Gail's answer. Okay, it's about passion. And I want to tell you something that I keep on my desk. And passion has no age, okay? So I have on my desk a saying by Aaron Hansen, and it says, "What if I fall? Oh, but my darling, what if you fly?" And I live by that quote. Okay, that's my favorite quote, okay?
Yeah, I go by all things are possible to him that believeth. So if I can believe that I can do something, then it's up to me to walk in my purpose, and I have to take on that responsibility. Like Gail said, having that passion, but I have to take on the responsibility of doing my best. And if I can't look myself in the mirror and say, "Hey, Dana, did you do your best that day? Did you put your best foot forward?" then I don't have anyone else to blame but Dana.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's all great advice. And I think this topic is important to everyone here on the call, but I just really appreciate all of your perspectives. And you guys come from such different areas, both in your businesses and how you've gone about getting that publicity, brand awareness, from grassroots to, Connie. I actually, for those on the call, I met Connie in DC. We were at it wasn't a SCORE event. It was an inventors meeting. And I really talk about that energy and passion that Gail's talking about. That's really what comes off of Connie. And we've been connected ever since, and that was 2 years ago. So I just want to thank every person here on the call for joining us today. This panel is being recorded. You will be able to view it later. And you did not miss the other panel today at 10. That one is also being recorded. So please feel free to, we'll be sharing all those recordings after this event. I do want to close up this panel right now. It's 10:55. We'll have 5 minutes before we jump into the next breakout session. Again, as a reminder, you want to leave this call by hitting the red leave button in your bottom corner. Don't leave yet. And you will want to hit the breakouts tab in the navigation and go to self-select whichever 11 o'clock panel you want to join. There's going to be one on venture capital and funding in this new normal. And then there's going to be one on, it's called Tech Talks, and you're going to really hear from our DC innovators in agriculture, in emerging technologies, and in healthcare. So join us either at the Tech Talks or at the funding in the new normal at 11 o'clock by hitting the breakout tab. And then after all of the breakouts, we will then see you back at our last closing keynote. So thank you guys. Thank all the speakers. Thank you all the attendees. And I will be on the next panel or breakout.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.